Today I'm going to show you how to create this animated scene here with this cave, this water, and this glowing orb. The water is procedural, the cave is procedural, and this noise on the emission shader is procedural as well. So I'll show you how I did that. This is what the cave node setup looks like, and this is what the water looks like. To set up our scene, let's get rid of this cube and this light, and I'm going to hit Shift A and bring in a cylinder. Hit R, X, and 90, and then enter to rotate it along the X-axis by 90 degrees. Then S, Y, and 2, and enter to size it along the Y-axis by a factor of 2. Then hit S and 5. We're just going to blow the whole thing up a little bit, and hit Control A and apply that scale. If you hit N, it brings up this shelf. Your scale should read 1, and your dimension should be 10 by 10 by 20. Also remember to hit Control A and apply that rotation as well. Let's tap into Edit mode and just hit 3 to go into face select. Grab these two faces on the end and hit X and just delete those. We won't really need those. Tap back out and hit W or right click to bring up this context menu and hit Shade Smooth. I want to set up my camera so it's looking down the cylinder like this here. So while the cylinder is highlighted, I'm going to hit 1 on the number pad and then /delete to center my object here. Then hit Control Alt 0 so our camera is set up looking right down the center there. So if we look, it should be on the Y-axis, and we can hit G and Y and then move it back and forth here so we can kind of zoom in with that control. Because we're doing some displacement, we need to switch to the Cycles render engine, so let's do that as well. And under Device, if you have GPU compute, select that too. It'll probably be faster. I want to add in an HDRI, so I'm going to go to World Properties and select this yellow circle next to Color and just click on Environment Texture. You'll be able to open something here and just navigate to where you got some HDRIs. I've got some nice free ones from the website HDRIhaven.com, and I'm going to use where is it? This one here, Kiara 1 Dawn 1K. Just load it in there, and we can't see it because we're not in rendered mode. So just hold down Z, move your mouse up, and you'll go into rendered mode. I'm going to change the top right to my 3D viewport, and let's just make that a bit bigger as well. Then I'm going to change the entire middle area here to my shader editor. And let's just use that material that was on our cube. Let's put it on our cylinder there. I'm going to hit N to get rid of that shelf. And I'm just going to move this principled BSDF to the side for now. I'm going to bring in a texture coordinate node. Place it right here. We're going to be coming out of object. The way I'm cycling through that, by the way, is just by holding down Control Shift and left clicking. And that's a node wrangler shortcut. So just make sure you have that enabled. To get a preview going here too, I'm going to hold down Z while my mouse is hovered over this window and just go into rendered mode by moving up. We can see what object looks like. I'm going to hit Shift A and bring in a noise texture. Just place it right here. And this is actually becoming out of the factor, which it doesn't make a huge difference. It's just a different pattern using these same parameters here. I'm going to set the scale at 1. The detail is going to be 6, and the roughness is going to be 0.3. Next, I'm going to bring in a displacement node, so just search for that, place it on here right after the noise, and you're just going to have to plug this into the height instead of into the normal. Then let's plug this into displacement on the material output. Nothing's happening just yet. We still have to do a couple more things. First of all, let's go to the material properties and scroll down to where it says settings, and it'll say bump only next to displacement. Let's just change that to displacement and bump. Then come up here to the modifiers, and let's add a subdivision surface modifier and put this at 2 for now. On this displacement node, I'm going to change the mid-level to 0.7, and the scale I'm going to change to 2, and that just increases the amount of displacement going on. One more thing I want to do to this cylinder as well is just tab into edit mode. Let's go into solid view as well, and this should have 32 edges, and you can check if you want by holding down Control Alt and just clicking on one of these edges, and it should select them all the way around. Then at the bottom here, you can see the number of edges. So I've got 32 out of 96 selected. So I'm just going to hit A twice there. And I'm going to hit Control R. And we want to make 18 loop cuts. And we can see in the bottom left-hand corner this time how many we have. So when I have 18, left click and then right click. And that just returns them to their starting position. Tab back into object mode. And let's go back into rendered mode as well by holding down Z. And the displacement should be working a little bit better now. So let's start to add a bit more complexity to this noise texture here. The first thing I'm going to do is duplicate this guy here, and then let's just change these back to the original settings there, which is 5, 2, and 0.5. And then I'm going to just change the scale to 0.5. I'm going to bring in a color ramp, just place it right here, and I'm going to come out of the color. Again, it doesn't really matter too much, but this is how to get the exact same result as me here. So this black on the color ramp, I'm just going to change this to 0.29, and I'm going to bring the white down to 0.6. Let's have a look at what this looks like too. With Control Shift left click, and get a preview going. Next, I'm going to bring in a mix RGB, and I'm going to place it right here after this first noise that we set up. Make a bit more room as well. And I'm going to plug this color ramp into the factor right here. And what this does is it kind of creates an exclusion map, basically anywhere that there's, white areas coming out of this guy right here. It's not really going to show this noise texture, and it's just going to be this flat gray color, which let's look at this here. The hex code, it should be 808080. So that's just a slightly darker gray. I want to add something else onto here, so I'm just going to come out of the object preview and just add a Voronoi texture on there. Just pop it right on the end. And we're going to change this scale to 0.1. And then we're actually going to change this to smooth F1 as well. So you have this smoothness. I'm going to change this to 0.2. I'm going to make a little incision here by holding down Shift and right-clicking and dragging through there. And then with this Voronoi node selected, I'm going to hit Control-Shift-D, and that duplicates it while leaving it attached to this point right here. Then I'm going to change the bottom to distance to edge, and the scale is going to be 0.3. So if you look at what that's doing, it's this cell pattern here. Then I'm going to bring another noise in here and just place it right upstream of these two Voronois, and it should be coming out of color just like it is there. I'm going to bring in a mix RGB, place it right here, and this is going to kind of control how much noise from this node gets introduced to everything else. So first of all, I'm just going to change the scale to 2 and leave everything else the same on this noise. And then for this mix, I'm just going to put it to 0.6. If this were all the way to the right, then it's like this noise texture isn't even here. So 0.6 is kind of like halfway there. You can see what it does. It just kind of breaks up these straight lines and makes some squiggly there. So what we're going to do is add a color ramp right after this bottom Voronoi texture. And I'm going to bring the black, actually the black is going to stay where it is. And this gray, this white rather, we're going to change to a 0.6 gray. And we're going to bring that to 0.035, so very low. Then I'm going to add a math node right after this here and right up here, but I'm going to plug the color into the top, and we're going to change both of these to multiply. These are just going to act as kind of controllers to control the strength of each of the contributions from these Voronoi and this guy up here. I could do another math node right here, but I won't worry about it. It's just if I wanted to change it around, it's an easy way to do it. This one's coming out of the color, so basically for each cell, it has a different amount that it's going to be sticking out when converted to black and white there. So I'm going to duplicate this multiply here and just change this to add. We're going to add this right here and then move these down a little bit. Let's duplicate that add again and just add this guy as well. And we're going to change both of these to 0.4. If we preview the displacement node here, we can see something doesn't quite look right. This is actually the texture I want right here, but I want it on the inside. And that's because I forgot a crucial step. Let's go into solid mode here for a second. I'm going to tab into edit mode and select everything. We just need to switch the normals so that they're on the other side. If you are unfamiliar with that, I'll just kind of bring up a quick demonstration here. So if we open up this here and click display normals, we have to adjust this so it's some size. Maybe let's go 0.5. That's good enough. These lines here are pointing outwards. We want them pointing inwards. So to do that, just make sure you've got everything selected and then hit Shift N, and you can open up this recalculate normals and then select inside. And it should look like this. So I'm going to turn those off again. We don't have to look at those. And just hide that guy. And now let's go back into rendered mode, and it should look better. I'm going to grab the camera and just zoom in a bit with G and then Y. Just position it a bit further into the cave. And let's go back to the cave selection here. We could play around with this if we wanted. We could turn this multiply up to 1, for instance. That does look pretty cool. Or maybe we change this scale here to something like 1, and then maybe decrease this to like 0.4. That also looks really cool. Definitely play around with this. The original settings for my tutorial were 0.1 and 0.4, but this is a really cool area to change around, get really different results on screen here. Okay, we're all done the displacement. Let's keep going here and work on the quick texture I set up. I'm going to bring in a noise texture, come out of object again, and this time we're going to be coming out of factor. Let's adjust the scale to 2 and the detail to 6. Then I'm going to bring in 3 color ramps and just place them right after this noise here, just like this. For the top color ramp, let's check out this bottom slider. I'm going to go into the hex code editor here. Let's set this one at 28211A. And this right one, let's set this to 101010. So that's pretty dark, and this one is kind of a brown color. Let's move the brown up to 0.26, and this black, or close to black, we're going to move down to 0.76. Let's plug this into the base color on that principled BSDF, and then let's take a look at this second color ramp here. This bottom one, we're just going to set this at a 0.32 gray, and then we'll leave it at 0. We'll leave the white at 1 there as well. We'll plug this into the roughness. Let's take a look at this principled BSDF just while we're building it as well. Then for this color ramp here, we're going to feed this into a bump node. So just go ahead and search for that, and then plug the color into the height, and then the normal into the normal. This is what our rendered progress looks like so far. It looks pretty good. There are some points here where it does look kind of low poly, and you could clean those up just by increasing the number for our subdivision surface modifier. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to zoom out and go into solid view, and let's add an array modifier. I'm going to change it so that it's above the subdivision surface modifier, and change the count to 5. I'm going to change X to 0 and Y to 1, so it's going in the Y direction instead. And then make sure you click merge, otherwise there's going to be gaps in between each array and light can get in. I'm going to bring in a path with Shift A, and just go to curve and select path. We need to rotate it with R, Z, and 90, so it's facing the right direction. And I'm going to click up here on the X-ray so that we can see through this cylinder. It's kind of like wireframe, but closer to solid mode. If I tab into edit mode, I can select a couple of these here. I'm going to select everything but the first one and hit G and Y and just kind of move these along the Y-axis there. I don't really care about them being equally spaced, and if I run out of them, I can just extrude a new one with E and then constrain it to the Y-axis, just like this. Why don't I do one more? Just like that. And then what I'm going to do is click back on my cylinder and come down to the properties, the modifier panel, and let's add a curve modifier. We can collapse these other modifiers so we can get a better look at this. And for the curve object, we can just go ahead and select NURBS path. It should be the only one in here. And then if we click back on this curve here, I guess we have to select it from the inside, go into edit mode, we can move any of these points around, and our cylinder will follow it. So I'm going to move a couple of these up here, and then move them slightly to the left as well. And maybe I'll just move these ones up here as well. Something like this. Let's see what it looks like. We can't really see the end, so why don't I move some of these down? Maybe like to the right, a bit more down. Something like this. Let's go into rendered mode. So this looks cool. I'm happy with this. Let's zoom out a second here and just move the whole cave with G and then Y. So it just covers the camera a little bit. And I just want to make a plane and then just move it along G and then Y and then rotate it along the X by 90 and then size it up and just kind of act as like a little cap at the edge of this cave here. So just kind of position it so that it closes off the back here, just like this. And then if we look at our camera view, things should be a lot darker. Let's click on our curve again, and we can always modify some of this stuff just to get some more interesting lines here as well. Just play around with this part till you're happy with the results. Maybe I'll move this up here. Let's go back into the view as well so we can see what's going on. And maybe I'll just move this slightly to the left as well. That looks cool. Next, let's make some water. That'd be kind of a cool addition to our cave. So I'm just going to bring in a plane and just lower it down here and just size it up so that it is going to be wide enough for everything here and just long enough so it's going to cover everything as well. You could use an array modifier if you wanted. It's not really necessary, but just set this up however you feel like you need to so that it covers everything. Let's move it up. Let's just kind of see what it looks like in here as well. Maybe what we could do is just add a quick material that's an emission material. Yeah, there we go. So now we can kind of see the height of our water there. Move it up and down to where you want it. This looks kind of cool. It's like 2 different spots, or whatever height you want. I kind of liked the look of my original one, where it kind of went down here, and then it had the reflection where it went kind of down a second time. It created kind of a cool, interesting shape there. I like this height for the water here. This is what it looks like rendered out so far. So let's change this material for the water. I'm going to change it from an emission shader back to a principled. And let's just take a look here. I'm going to change the transmission to 1. And then let's add a texture coordinate here and come out of the object. And let's bring in a noise. Place it right here. Let's change this to 4D. And I'm going to change the scale. Actually, leave it at 5. And then 2. And for the roughness, we'll put it at 0.3. Then we'll feed this into a displacement. And this is going to go into the displacement on the material output. And we're going to change this so it's going into the height instead of the normal there. And we'll change this very low here, 0.005. So it's almost imperceptible. You'll also need to come to the material properties and just go to where it says displacement. Just change from bump only to displacement and bump. Then let's go to the modifiers and add a subdivision surface modifier. We'll just set this at 2 and just set it to simple so that it doesn't come through the rock when it comes in on the corners there. Maybe make it a little longer too, just in case there's no harm in having it a little larger. Just make sure you apply that scale. For this principled BSDF, let's change the roughness to 0.05, and the color is just going to be E7, E7, E7. So just the default color that it is when it's brought in here. Let's just attach that so that we can see the reflection here. You can see the ripples happening just right here. That's the effect from this displacement. So with this water, we could change the scale here. If we went to 10, it'd be a little smaller. If we went to, not that one, if we went to 2, it'd be a little larger. I liked 5. It kind of makes your cave look larger or smaller, depending on the ripples on the size of the water there. And I like this scale here as well at 0.005. If you set it too high, it looks a little too extreme. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to animate this W value. To start off, I've got my timeline at frame 1. And this noise here, if I hover over the W, I can hit I on my keyboard and it captures a keyframe. And then if this node is highlighted, you'll see that keyframe down here. If another node is highlighted, it'll disappear. So just make sure you click here and you'll be able to edit that. Go to frame 100 and just change this to 6 and hover over this again and hit I. While both of these are selected, I'm going to hit V and just click vector. That's going to change the interpolation. So instead of starting slow, going fast in the middle, and ending slow, it's just going to go the same speed throughout. It'd be a little tough to see what the animation looked like in rendered mode unless you have a really high-end computer, but you could go to material preview mode. And if you press play, you get an idea of what this looks like. I think it looks a little bit fast. I found that if I set this at 500 frames, it looked pretty good. So basically, 100 frames for every 1.2 you have up here. So if you press play, I thought this looked a lot more realistic. You could switch it up faster or slower, but I thought this looked pretty good. The next thing I'm going to do is set up the animation for the camera, which I just had moving backwards slowly. So I'm going to hide this tunnel by clicking on it, just hitting H on my keyboard. If we want to bring that up, it's Alt-H. So I'm going to add in another curve because the existing curve isn't going to be moving my camera in the correct direction. And I'm going to hold down, or pardon me, hit R, Z, and 270 to rotate it along the Z axis. Then I'm going to hit G and then Y to move it a little closer to this camera, and click on my camera and my curve, and hit F3 to go into the search, and let's just search for follow path. Then hit that. And then if we hit play, we should see our camera moving back slowly. Let's see what that looks like. I'm going to hit Alt-H to bring back my cave again. Go into camera view. Just go to the beginning of my animation here by hitting Shift and left arrow while we're in this timeline area here. Then we can hit spacebar to play it. You can just see how quickly we're moving backwards. It's moving a little fast, and it's stopping a little quickly there. So let's adjust that by going here to the object data properties. We're going to go to path animation, and we'll set this to 400. So let's go back to the beginning again, and now we see it's going to take 400 frames for it to move along that whole curve, and after 400 it's going to stop. That looks pretty good to me. I'm just going to hide my cave again, and I'm going to bring in an icosphere. So just hit Shift A, select icosphere, and S and 0.25 to make it a quarter the size. Let's add two modifiers onto this. Let's add a curve and a subdivision surface. Subdivision surface we'll leave as is. For the curve object, let's click this eyedropper tool and just select that first NURBS path that we made. And now if we move this back and forth along the y-axis, it'll follow the curve. So let's move it up to kind of this slope up here. Somewhere up there is pretty good. I'm going to go to frame, let's go to frame 40. And I'm going to hover over the 3D viewport and hit I and select location. And then I'm going to move to frame, let's go to frame 60. And I'm going to hit G and then Y. So we move along here. And actually, let's bring back our cave with Alt-H so we can see where that is. And I just need to reselect this little sphere here. And let's hover over the 3D viewport again and hit I and just select location. Then let's go to frame 400 and let's move this even further. And let's go to solid view so we can see where it is. Let's just grab it with G and then Y. Move it to maybe something like here and hit I and hit location. Now if we watch our animation, it kind of zooms in around frame 50. And then it goes slowly along here. If we want to put these two closer together, it'll go much faster. Something like this. Let's see what this looks like. You know, much faster on the entry when these are closer together. Let's give our sphere a material, and I'm just going to set it as an emission shader. Just get rid of this. Just bring in a simple emission shader and plug it into the surface. Let's see what it looks like in rendered view. Yeah, we can see it glowing there. It's not glowing very much. I'm going to change this to a higher number, something like 75. Now we can see it lighting up the cave walls. I'm going to come into the emission color. I actually changed this to slightly blue. I set it at D7, F5, FF. And that's just very slightly blue. It just gives a blue tinge to the light along the rocks on the wall. I'm going to go back to frame 1 there. And I'm going to hover over the strength and hit I. I need to bring up a separate window. Oops. And that's going to be the graph editor. If I open this up here, I can go in the shader node tree, and this right here, the default value, the strength for the emission, I can hit N and bring up these modifiers. I'm going to add a noise modifier, and we can play around with the scale and the strength, which I had to do, and it was much harder than the water because you couldn't really see what it was going to look like in the material preview very well. So what I ended up with, though, is the scale to 3, and I set the strength to 10. So basically, it's kind of, you know, depending on where it is, you know, you can see 72.9, 72.5, 77.74. It just kind of goes up and down, and this is the frequency at which it goes up and down as well. I'm just going to close this back up, and sometimes that's harder than it looks. I'm just going to join the areas like this with right click. And we should be all set up. If you want to see what this looks like, go to the material preview. You can kind of see, the camera's moving backwards, and here's the sphere with its entry there. Play around with these keyframes here. And one more thing that I actually did too, I'm going to duplicate this plane, move it along the y-axis a bit further, and just kind of blow it up here. And I'm going to change, so let's just see what this looks like. Oh, we can't even see it. Yeah, it's too far. So let's grab the camera there. And increase the clipping. Hopefully that changes it. So if I do it up to 1,000 there, that should be fine. Yeah, that looks good. So let's grab this plane in the background and go to the object properties, I believe it is. Yeah, the object properties. And we are going to go to visibility, and we're going to make it so that it doesn't cast any shadows right here. So that allows the HDRI to still light everything normally as if that plane wasn't there. But it's just nice to see, not too much going on right here sometimes. If you did want that HDRI as a background, by all means do it. But this is just how I had it in my original render. Here's our rendered progress. We still need to do two things. I'd like to clean up this noise a bit. We also want to add a glow around the sphere as well. That's still missing. No matter how much we turn up that emission, that won't do it. We need to do that in the compositor. For the noise, let's go to the render settings and just find where it says denoising. And then just click L and M. That's a really quick way to set up some denoising. If it is blurry, you can compensate by turning up this sample size right here. Yeah, it should look pretty good as long as you're not zooming in too closely. I'm going to go to the compositing workspace for this next part. And you'll need to have rendered out some form of the image at this point. And you can come up here to use nodes, and you'll have render layers and composite. I'm going to hit Shift A, and we can just search for a glare node. I'm going to place this right here, and we're going to change it to fog glow. We'll leave it on medium. The threshold we're going to change to 60, and the size we're going to change to 6. To get back to that previous workspace, we can just click on Layout up here. And if we render this out now, we should see a glowing effect. There we go, that looks great. Just a side note too, when you're rendering this out, this glowing effect won't show up until everything is rendered out, and then it'll show up afterwards. Okay, that's it for today. Hope you're able to see what I was doing and how you might change it around, make it unique. This was a lot of fun to put together. I feel like it could be kind of a cool sci-fi scene, and hope you have fun creating something cool with it. Thanks for watching.